today. Three things. What is content marketing? Why is content marketing important? And how do you approach content marketing in a strategic way? And I'll actually leave you with 7 steps on, how you can approach it so that, it makes planning easier, it makes execution easier. And I'm always for, simple approaches. So first and foremost, what is content marketing? I bolded the words here because these are things, I want you to walk away with. So if you think about content marketing, you think about it being a very strategic marketing approach in terms of creating and distributing valuable, relevant, and consistent content. And what this does is, hopefully as you do that, you'll be able to attract and retain the keywords here, clearly defined audience. And we'll talk a little bit about it later as we go along. And the outcome basically is, profit, right? Most businesses, you want profit to be able to sustain yourselves. So why is content marketing important? There are a lot of different benefits to doing content marketing. These are the top, reasons why. Increasing brand awareness, of course, generating leads for your business, establishing authority, and most importantly is building trust. So if you actually kind of like I mentioned, my background was in e-commerce. So if you actually tie it back with e-commerce, why would people want to buy your products or services online? Before they could even transact with you, they need to feel like they trust you. And trust usually comes with the ability for you and your business to establish authority in your field. Content marketing is really, really important, as you can see through social media, for instance, creating a lot of customer engagement, promoting brand loyalty, because, if they feel like you are a trusted authority, if they love and they enjoy engaging with your brand, they're going to come back again and again, and you're going to be top of mind for them. And of course, increasing sales and conversions, if you tie it back to e-commerce. So I think one thing to just walk away from with this slide is, just remember that, algorithms, even though they're always changing, whether it be Google, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Instagram, algorithms and audiences, that is your potential customers or your current customers, love original content that does mostly, I would say, 2 things, either educate or inspire. So this is the meat of the whole presentation. And, I'm going to leave some time at the end of the presentation for you to ask questions. Again, any point in time, leave them in chat and, I can get to them. So the how of, strategic content planning, it's, I would say the beauty of it, right? Like, you kind of need to know how to do it in order to get the outcomes you want. So for me, there are 7 steps that you kind of need to think about in terms of getting content marketing right. The first one, and I'll deep dive into each of them as we go along. So step 1, defining your business goals and objectives. So if you don't have your North Star, whatever content you put out there, oops, sorry. Someone was saying that chat is disabled. I'm not sure. Okay, if you can't leave it in chat, just throw it in Q&A and, I'll get to them as well. Thanks, Vince. Sorry. Okay, so back to it. So step 1, define your business goals and objectives, because if you don't have your North Star, you don't know what you're planning content around and how do you actually measure the effectiveness of the content that you're putting out, right? Step 2 is understanding your audience. Who are you creating this content for? And again, audience, it's interesting because it could be your current customers, but it could also be your potential customers. That means people who are not your customers right now, but you actually want them to be customers. So how do you balance, the content needs between existing customers and potential customers? Step 3 is to perform what we call a content audit. And a content audit is, as I will explain later, basically re-looking and re-evaluating all the content that you have put out and improvising from there. So this is highly applicable to businesses that have already been doing content marketing. But if you have not, there's another way to approach this. Step 4 is to execute SEO. SEO actually stands for search engine optimization. And it's like a word that gets everyone really like afraid, but we'll talk a little bit about it later and why that's important to your content marketing. Step 5 is to define your content mix in terms of which platforms you're using, what are the formats, and there's just to make it a little bit more complicated for you guys, there's something called the customer funnel if you don't really understand what it is already. And all three aspects actually define what your content mix will be. Step 6 is to create a content calendar and schedule. And I'll share some of the platforms that I like in terms of helping you manage, manage your content and, schedule it for dissemination. And then step 7 is really important. It's to measure and analyze, and that ties back to step 1, right? So whether whatever you're doing, all these steps, are they helping you with your business goals and objectives. Right. So again, step 1, sorry, there's a lot of words here, but I will be sharing the slides with all of you. So that's why I left all the words in here, so that it's easier for you to kind of reflect back while listening to this presentation. So if you're already a business owner, you might already know that there are frameworks out there that you're able to use to set clear, achievable business goals. There are a couple of ones that I put out here, which are more popular than others. There's the SMART framework, OKRs, MBOs. Personally, I like the SMART and OKRs in terms of a framework, but it's up to you and your team to decide which framework works better for you. But why our framework is important, we will look at it in the next slide. But basically, types of business goals, right? Because people sometimes get confused. They're like, what's a business goal and how do I define it? So in terms of types of business goals, here are some of the ones that I think would apply to most companies. So growth, in terms of a goal, whether you want to grow in size or scope, the process, whether you're, talking about team effectiveness, better manufacturing processes, for instance, problem solving, development, innovation, profitability, sustainability, marketing, customer relations, and company culture. So you might be asking, like, how does content marketing weave into all of these business goals? So I would say that content marketing will be able to help you with some of these business goals, but probably not all of them. So you might want to sit down with your team and figure out, okay, if I have like 7 business goals, where does content marketing and how can content marketing help, right? Like just at a glance, it's really easy. If you think about marketing in terms of influence, if you think about sustainability, content marketing can help you achieve business goals in this area, profitability as well, customer relations, for instance. And I'll give you 2 examples later in the slides where you can see how it's interwoven. Next, so goals and objectives, right? Goals are not objectives. We think about objectives as small measurable steps that you can take towards the larger goal. And they're usually more tactical. So, you use them to achieve the business goal, but there are things that are more actionable. And again, I'll show you an example in the next slide. Right. So for instance, example 1, for the business goal of marketing, which is to increase influence. So for instance, if you're saying your company, okay, I want to, for this coming year in 2024, I want to reach twice as many people through social media. That's a broader business goal, right? And you can say, I want to achieve 3x the number of saves on Instagram. And all these fall under marketing in terms of increasing influence. The objectives here would be more tactical, like I mentioned. So you want to increase frequency of your posts from 3 times to 4 times a week, for instance. Or you want to introduce a weekly media budget of $50 for boosting those posts. Or the third objective would be to create 1 additional educational post per week that people, would hopefully save and come back to it because, it's relevant and evergreen. Another business goal, as I mentioned, like, if it's not marketing, you could see it in terms of sustainability. So you're saying, hey, for my business this year, enhancing environmental impact is very important to us as a business. And 2 goals, in terms of how we want to achieve it. So firstly is to enhance awareness as an environmental friendly brand. Secondly, to encourage customers, for instance, if you're a product-based company, to choose biodegradable packaging. So objectives here would be, how can I include statistics related to my company's sustainability efforts on the website, right? Another objective here that corresponds to encouraging customers to choose biodegradable packaging would be, can I partner with influencers who create unboxing videos and share how they like biodegradable packages, on their social media platforms, for instance. So all these objectives are relevant to content marketing and revolve around content marketing. So with your teams, I would highly recommend sitting down, figure out what the business goals are for the year, in terms of the different aspects of business goals or different areas of business goals, and then setting the objectives that correspond to each business goal. Step 2, understanding your audience. I talked about really quickly earlier about, it can be a little bit tricky in terms of, okay, what is the split between current audience versus new potential customers that want to bring in that may not necessarily be the same type of customers that I currently have now. So you kind of need to figure out within, your company, like what the split in terms of resources are. But basically what this step is talking about is understanding who is reading and engaging with your content. Does your current content resonate with your current audience, right? If it doesn't, and you can tell from like the number of likes, the number of saves, the number of shares, for instance, on social, or, in terms of the number of conversions to sales, if you're not seeing anything or any social media marketing efforts that is converting to sales, it's highly likely that your content is not resonating with the audience that, you want. Thirdly, what's unique about your content? So I think this is important because there's just so much out there, right? So how do you position yourself where you're a little bit different, and the moment your audience sees you, they know that it's your brand. And again, there's no magic bullet to it. It's really about experimenting and tweaking. But I would say, if you're saying, hey, I don't know what's unique about my brand or my content, I think it's then important to take a step back, all the way to, this high level of branding. Okay, why are you doing what you're doing? How are you different from your competitors? And kind of doing a branding exercise before you start creating your content. But that's not covered in today's class, but yeah, I think about what's so unique about your content or what you're offering. The next point here is about target customer. So your ideal customer may not be your actual customer, right? So what you have in your mind when you were creating your products or services to sell may not be undertaken by people who are actually consuming them. So it's always important to keep, making sure that you know who your audience is. And we always talk a lot about customer persona. So a customer persona, would be something like, just say, my name is Ellen, right? So you can say, something like, enthusiast Ellen. So someone who is very, for instance, if you are, like a sports apparel company, enthusiast Ellen is someone who like loves, exercising, but specifically, likes yoga, which is your company's product, and someone who exercises, 4 times a week by practicing yoga. She is, between 35 to 40 years old. She lives in an apartment in downtown Honolulu. She doesn't drive, for instance, to yoga, but she likes to walk to yoga. So her yoga class has to be nearby. So that's what we call like a customer persona. So if you as a business, you don't know what your customer persona is, then it's kind of, it's high time that you should take a step back before making any content to understand what or who your customer persona is. And a single company can have a couple of customer personas, but I would say even the most successful companies that sells a lot of products, they typically have at maximum like 4 to 5 personas, no more than that. So, and the reason why you create these personas would be, it helps you as a company figure out the messaging that you want to get to them, right? So for instance, as I mentioned, like if I'm a persona, I love, yoga. If your company is going to be creating, for instance, products that are, related to cycling, right, as another line of business, and you actually feed content to me about cycling, it's highly unlikely that it would resonate with me, and I would actually respond to it by liking the content or sharing the content. I might share it with someone who likes cycling, but it wouldn't be something that I resonate with, right? So creating customer persona is really important for your business. And, there are four actually aspects of a persona. So there's demographic. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm, 35 to 40 years old. That's age, gender, and female, right? And then it could also be, let's see, psychographic. So lifestyle, personality, interest. So like I like walking to class. I don't like driving to class. So, it has to be, for instance, if you're creating yoga apparel, it'd be something that I could actually wear and walk in public and actually feel and look good in it, for instance, right? And then behavioral, media consumption, shopping frequency. I'm always on Instagram, but I'm not on Facebook. So if you are doing a lot of content on Facebook, I probably wouldn't see it. It wouldn't reach me as a persona. Geographic would be, I live in downtown Honolulu. So if your marketing efforts is to, sell to Honolulu, then, your content has to be built around it, right? Data sources, if you are already collecting content about, data about your customers, great. But if you're not, here are some sources that you could consider getting data about your customers. Online surveys, focus groups. There's also website data through Google Analytics. And if you actually have an online store, I highly recommend you setting up Google Analytics. Even if you don't have an online store, that means you're not selling products, but more services, I would still encourage you to have Google Analytics set up so that you can tell where the traffic's coming from, and, demographics about the people visiting your website. Facebook Insights is great as well. If if your audience is predominantly older, or you're selling products and services to, older demographic of people, you have a lot of Facebook Insights that can help you with that. For younger brands, or brands creating products targeted at like millennials, Gen Zs, and even younger, IG polls are usually a great way. I've seen a lot of brands do that where they're like, hey, tell us, we're trying to understand more about you to serve your needs. Tell us how old you are, and it's like a series of like questions that they create in stories where people can just click really quickly to tell the brand more about themselves. So these are some of the ways where you can get more data about your customer, and tweaking and refining the persona. Again, if you have questions, leave it in Q&A if chat is not working for you. Thirdly, perform a content audit, as I mentioned earlier. So for this one, I think basically the question to ask yourself is, do you know in detail the types of content that are currently working the best for you? And again, you know that they're working because it, involves a positive outcome, whether it be sales, whether it be, likes, shares, saves on social, or, you can tell that someone's actually sharing your blog post, someone has watched a video on your website, or if you, create long form content in terms of YouTube videos, people are actually commenting on it, they're resharing it, or they're subscribing to your channel. So there should be some kind of outcome that tells you whether your content is working. And again, when we say the types of content that work best, it has to tie back to your business goals, right? So if your business goal wasn't about, increasing, so for instance, if your business goal was about, okay, I want to increase sales through my YouTube content by the end of 2024, and then come to end of 2024, you did increase sales, but it wasn't through YouTube, right? It was probably through another channel that you set up, which you weren't aware of, that could actually facilitate that kind of conversions for you. So, that's what we call like a content audit, where we say, okay, you know what, this was the goal. Did I, I created this pathway to get to that goal in terms of content marketing, but did it work out the way that I thought it would? Or was there something else that actually did better, right, at helping me get to my goal. So performing a content audit is very important, and for companies and the companies that I've helped, at the end of every year, we sit down and we look at what are the different campaigns you've run, what are all the different platforms that you're on, and which ones are actually working best that are tied to your business goals. And I would also encourage, if you have the capacity and resources, to actually do a content audit every quarter, because you can't just let your content marketing strategy stretch out for the whole year without doing any tweaks or improvisations, right? Another thing is platform, like when we say types of content as well, we're talking about like format. So whether it's a video or whether it's like a social media post, is it a social media reel? Is it a blog post? Is it like maybe like a online webinar that you put on? So that there'll be types of content. Secondly, it's the platform, right? They're not mutually exclusive, right? Different types of content would do better on specific platforms. So you would also want to know what are some of the platforms that you are currently using that works best at distributing your content, right? Is it Instagram? Is it Facebook? Is it Quora? Is it Reddit? Is it Twitter? Right? Is that TikTok? There's so many platforms out there, and so many ways to structure the content type for each platform that it would be great if you could actually measure it. So if you are an existing business and you're already in content marketing, these are the things that you need to do when you perform a content audit, right? Gather insights about how your content is performing, what your audience likes and dislikes, again, where your content needs to be updated. So for instance, if you are in like the space of business services related to accounting or tax or legal, for instance, there are like certain developments that happen in your field that you might want to make sure that it's updated on your website, for instance, or create, content around it that, rolls out in the next couple of weeks to talk about those updates. If you're a product-based company, that means you create like, I don't know, jewelry, food items, things like that. Has it changed? Have you stopped making certain like flavors, or have you introduced new flavors, for instance, that you haven't really updated on your website? And the reason why you need to do that is also because, for most of the algorithms out there, especially Google, if they take into consideration the freshness of data or information on your website. So if they, based on the algorithm, if they see that your website hasn't been updated for a couple of weeks or months, I would say probably more months, it's highly likely that would affect your ranking during the Google search itself. So you wouldn't come up as high as the other websites that have been refreshing constantly. And that's why, a lot of companies, they use like blogs as a strategy to refresh their websites. Check whether your pages are SEO optimized. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well, because this has actually flowed into social media, not just websites. And of course, new SEO opportunities. And, I want to say that SEO is probably one of the most complicated things for e-commerce and website development. So if you're not, as a business owner, if this is something that you're not confident, to save yourself time and kind of mental energy, I would highly recommend just to find an expert who can do it for you. Just pay them and say, hey, this is what I want to happen for SEO. Let me know what are the changes that I would have to make, and have them do it so that you can focus on the core business itself. Okay. If you're a new business that hasn't done this before, I would highly encourage you to actually conduct some competitor analysis. And here I actually wrote, don't be afraid to emulate, because when you're new in the space, when you're new in the space, sometimes, starting fresh and starting on a clean page might be difficult for you. So what you can do is actually look at what the competitors in your industry are doing, look at their website, look at their blogs if they have any, look at their social media, just to get a feel of what's out there already. And by doing that, what's actually helpful is that you can actually identify gaps that maybe you can feel as someone in the space itself, right? So for newcomers, usually, and they're not doing any content marketing yet, I would tell them, okay, go look at what others are doing out there, come back to me and say, this is what I like, this is, or even this is what I don't like and I don't want to do. And, we can craft content around it for you based on kind of the due diligence that you've done. Okay. Step 4 is to execute SEO. So SEO again stands for search engine optimization. And basically what it means is, strategies that help you position yourself in a way where the search engine, i.e. Google, in a way where, Google would find you helpful. Right? So basically, Google starts to like you and your website when you're able to help Google, the search engine, answer questions. Because at the end of the day, that's what Google's here for. It's basically a database of answers, if you think about it. It's where people ask questions and Google has to basically give them the best answers to the question. So if your website is set up in a way where it helps Google answer those questions, the algorithm is going to love you and therefore they're going to rank you even higher, right? So if you look at a screenshot I posted in here, and I circled, I kind of did like a quick test run for today's session. And I wrote I asked the question, what is Li Hingwei? Because, that's something where I think a lot of people who are not from Hawaii may not really know. So interestingly, immediately what came up, are actually websites based in Hawaii that talks about Li Hingwei, right? So if you are in a space for food products and Li Hingwei is a core ingredient that you use, you would want to create a lot of content around it so that, your website comes up when people are searching about Li Hingwei, for instance. Additionally, I'm not sure if people on the webinar know, but if you look at the section, people also ask the section where I circled in orange. That's basically how Google's pulling out answers to all the different questions that people are asking, in relation to a specific topic, right? So here, in this case, is about Li Hingwei. So people are asking things like, what is Li Hingwei made out of? So if you actually have a blog post that talks about that, Google is probably going to hopefully pull it and place it here under people also ask section, right? It gives you more visibility for free. Is Li Hingwei good for you? What is Li Hingwei powder in Chinese, right? So from a website perspective, SEO is very competitive. But there are a lot of ways where you can, kind of compete without actually having to spend more money. And that's using content marketing, writing better content for your web pages, creating more educational material for your blog posts, and things like that. So I also mentioned earlier that SEO now has kind of spilled into the social media space, unfortunately, only because if, look at the social media apps like Instagram, right? They have kind of evolved over the years. And their algorithms have also kind of become more sophisticated in terms of helping people look for information they want within the app itself. So a big one here, if you're on Instagram, for instance, and you probably know this already, but you can actually search for information within Instagram itself, right? And you can tell that, they're kind of still refining the search algorithms within Instagram itself, because if you put in too many keywords, they return no results. So they're actually looking for keywords like 3 to 4 keywords. Typically, I would say that would resonate with all the different social media posts, and they try to pull out relevant ones for you. So the takeaway here for SEO application within social media like Instagram would be captions. So your captions is different. Captions are different from hashtags, right? Hashtags, you have the pound sign or whatever sign you call it. Captions are basically the description of it within for the reel or the post or even in stories. the captions, I've seen a lot of creators today, they actually write better captions. And if naturally the language doesn't fall into the caption itself underneath, they actually write for SEO and they write like other keywords. They embed other keywords in there so that when Instagram actually, if people on Instagram actually search for stuff, your content would come up. There'll be more likelihood that your content would come up for them. So SEO, again, it's always changing, but it's something that's very important and it's closely intertwined with content marketing. So again, if you can't do it yourself, I highly recommend you finding someone or an expert that can help you with it. And in terms of tools to search for keywords that are relevant, so for your website, there'll be Google Search Console, which is free, Google Keyword Planner, which is free. But the Keyword Planner, I would say it's not as helpful as a Search Console, but the Keyword Planner is great in terms of finding out what kind of keywords your competitors are using, because it shows you the price and the cost. So the more expensive the keyword, the higher the likelihood that your competitor is, using those keywords. That's why they're more expensive, right? Google Trends are great in terms of, especially if your product or service, it's more, I would say, not limited to Hawaii only. They can go across the world, across the US, but Google Trends, will be great in terms of like, okay, finding out what people, what are on people's minds in terms of health and wellness for 2024, right? And kind of understanding that and applying that to your content. There's another site called Keyword Snatcher, which is still free. And again, because they're free platforms, they have limitations. But if you were to ask me, like, which is my favorite paid SEO platform to look for keywords, is going to be Ahrefs. It's costly, but I think it's good. So it's really up to your company whether you can afford it to use it. But that's another reason why I think sometimes it's better just pay an expert, because then you don't have to subscribe to platforms like this and pay on an annual basis, but instead you're just paying the expert. The expert does it for you and they already have access to all these platforms. When I give you this deck, the underlined words are actually links. So if you click on other options, it brings you to a web page which I felt like had a really good listing of all the different SEO platforms out there that you can use. And in terms of Instagram hashtags, as well, again, you can use those hashtags and apply them to captions as well, and words that you want to embed within your caption. So I also use hashtags as a way to kind of guide me in terms of like, what's trending out there for social media hashtags, and use them in captions. So I also included the link here. So if you actually click on it when I send you the deck, you can see a whole list of places where you can look at Instagram hashtags. Okay. So step 5, defining your content mix. So there are 3 aspects to this, like I mentioned: funnel, platforms, format. So why the funnel is important, I think a lot of, digital marketing people don't talk too much about it in terms of how it layers onto content marketing. But I think it's very important, because if you're not familiar with the whole idea of the funnel, basically what it says is, you are trying to reach the widest possible audience as you can. And from there, with every step from awareness, that means they learn about your brand, to becoming interested in your brand, and then your brand becomes part of their consideration set, and then they have intentions to buy it. From this process all the way down, you're going to lose potential customers along the way, right? So it's not like, you advertise to one customer, that one customer buys from you. You probably would have to, depending on your industry, advertise or reach 100 customers, and then 5 of them buy from you. So the 100 customers are going to be on the awareness stage, but the content that you create for this awareness stage is going to be very different from the content that you create at the intent stage or the consideration stage. So when I talk about content mix, if you are a company, for instance, if you are a company that makes baby socks, right, and you have the capacity to manufacture and sell even more baby socks, then you actually want more customers to come your way. So which means that you need to place a lot of emphasis on your awareness to get a lot of people to know about your brand so that hopefully they would convert into buying your baby socks. However, if you think about it, if you are more of a service-based company or like an agency where you're kind of maxed out, you don't really need more clients, but you want your existing clients to actually maybe pay you more to get more services, then your marketing or your content marketing, actually it's going to be more on the intent to evaluation, right? So if, for instance, if I'm running an agency and I already do e-commerce services, but now I want to layer on, I don't know, AI services, and I want my clients to think about, oh, how can they use AI in their business? Then I'm going to be creating content about AI applications, that can be implemented, for existing businesses. And I'm going to be sharing that with my existing set of customers, right? So again, depending on where you are in your business, the stage of your business, and, whether you're trying to get more customers or you're trying to get existing customers to pay more, you have to figure out your content strategy. And that is governed by the funnel, where you are and what would you like to achieve. The platforms, again, we have so many out there. What are you on? Is it working for you? Do you have to change it up? Do you have to switch platforms? Is the platform resonating with your audience? Are you even reaching the right audience with your platforms? So again, it comes back to, it has to take into consideration your customer persona and where they're on, right? But again, you may only be reaching a certain demographic of your customer persona on that platform. Are there other platforms out there where, your customer demographic or persona could be residing on that you need to take a look at? Or are you trying to reach a whole, other type or other persona that is not on the platform that you're on right now? And then other things that I like my clients to think about is, is my focus on text or visuals, right? And the reason for that is, all of us needs to know our limitations. If you are a company and you're more visual, for instance, you have like more products, you're a product-based company, you can take a lot of beautiful pictures about, of your product. Then you will want to be more on like Instagram, for instance, where it's very heavy on visuals. But if you are a service-based company, whether it's a law firm, accounting firm, or, coaching and so on, would visuals be the best way for you to reach your audience, or would text actually be a better way to reach your audience, right? And if it's text, could it be more like Twitter, or could it be more, LinkedIn, for instance, right? And if you're managing all this social and all this content marketing yourself, do you have the time to engage on multiple channels? If not, my advice typically is choose just one, do it really, really, really well, then figure out a second platform to start your endeavor all over again, to build audience on that new channel. In terms of formats, I broke it into two different ones: short form content, long form content. Short form content, we're all familiar with social media posts, reels, stories. So even like within Instagram and Facebook itself, there are different formats. So you kind of need to be familiar with what does better. There's email marketing, of course, and then there's short form video, infographics. All these are short form content. In terms of long form content, blog posts, articles, webinar, ebooks, guides, videos, long form videos, podcasts, white papers, and I put here evergreen content. I put them under long form content only because most evergreen content they typically do better when they're long form content. And what I mean by that, by evergreen, would be things like, just say if you are a service-based organization, like a law firm, for instance, and evergreen content would be things like, just say you do property law, right? So you can talk about, what are some of the things I have to consider, when I purchase, or what are some of the legal considerations, for me when I purchase, a property for a commercial property, right? So something like this, which would typically not change that much, would be considered evergreen content. And, they're usually in a longer form, like a blog post, or they're going to be in a form of a video where you have an expert in your firm talking about it. But yeah, evergreen content is usually great, and I highly recommend companies putting some time and effort into creating that as well. Step 6, create a content calendar and schedule. The why is kind of, I would say, straightforward. It gives you I will share with you what it means. So it gives you a bird's eye view of the content that you have that's upcoming. It's easier for your planning. It's more organized, less overlaps in terms of the content they are creating. And at the end of the day, it's less stress, right? Because the thing that I hear a lot from businesses is, I have no time to post. Or, and that's not an excuse. I typically recommend this strategy of batching, and you might have heard of it if you're already in the doing a lot of content creation. Batching is figuring out what you want to do for either the week or the month. Sit down, maybe just take one day to create everything, and then scheduling it for the week or the month, right? And it takes a lot of kind of mental work out of that process, for that whole month, because you're good, and it's all the content is there, and it's going to go out, through the month because you've already planned for it. So some platforms that you can use to create your content calendar would be like a Google spreadsheet if you're not ready to invest in any platforms. Trello is also actually free. You can create cards in there that, by day, and then put it in like captions and even the visual posts that you want to use. But both Google Spreadsheet and Trello, just remember that you can't schedule it. So you will still have to manually take the information out and put it on the different platforms. But at least, it provides you with an interface for you to plan your content. And then you have Facebook Business Suite. It's also free, but it's only for Facebook and Instagram. Facebook Business Suite allows you to plan, but also schedule your content, so they go out automatically. And then you have, of course, Canva. But I'm not sure where Canva draws the line. I think if you want to schedule the information for dissemination on the different platforms, you would have to go to Canva Pro. But if you are just using it to plan, you can do it for free. And then some of the paid platforms will be Later.com, Canva Pro, the OGs in the space like Hootsuite, Buffer, CoSchedule. There are a lot of them out there. And honestly, a lot of them, I feel like they are just kind of competing based on price, per seat, and it really depends on how large your team is. So these are examples of how, people have kind of planned their content. And as you can see on the left, it's a Google spreadsheet. Like I said, you can do it for free. It's just that you have to manually post it or push it out on the various platforms. But again, if you're a company, and you're new in this space, you don't have a lot of resources to pay for platforms, this is a great way to start and get yourself organized. If you have some resources, for instance, this I pulled from another platform called SocialBee, and you can see, it's a little bit more sophisticated. It reminds you what you're trying to do for each day and what kind of content you want to create. So yeah, I think it's, as a business, I would highly recommend that you try different platforms because most of them would have like a trial period. So take that opportunity, figure out which platform works best for you, and, try to use it as much as you can when it comes to, planning and scheduling your content so that you don't have to do it manually. Last step, so measure and analyze. So here, as you can see, I pulled back the business goal from what I shared earlier in the first couple of slides. So for marketing, in terms of increasing influence, if we are talking about increasing engagement, likes or shares by 5%, I want to reach twice as many people through social media. I want to achieve 3 times the number of saves on Instagram. And my objective, that means the tactical ways of approaching it, would be increasing the frequency of posts, introducing a weekly media budget, creating one educational how to post per week, right? So the question now is like, how do I measure that objective and ensuring that it tied back to my goal? There are different ways to do it. There are very sophisticated ways to do it, which I feel like not a lot of small, medium businesses are set up to do. But that doesn't mean that you can get to that later. However, just kind of, making sure that you are trying your best, using the bare minimum to, create a connection between objective and goal. there are platforms to help you do that, right? So if you look at Google Analytics, you can figure out like, oh, okay, like people are coming to my website because of this post, or because of this thing I shared on, or maybe because of this webinar that I did, right? Social media analytics tells you that as well. Web traffic analysis, that can be done through Google Analytics, but there are other platforms that can help you with it. But I would say just use Google Analytics because it's free, and tie it to your website. Of course, email sign up tracking. When you set up your email campaigns, make sure that it's also tied back to Google Analytics, so you can tell like, oh, like someone came and bought something because of this email I sent, I pushed out, or someone signed up, to be on my newsletter because of this email sign up sheet or form that I put up. I love promo code redemptions because that very easily shows me like, oh, because of this campaign, from an e-commerce perspective, because of this campaign, people are actually buying because I saw them redeem this promo code, right? So promo codes are like the lowest hanging fruit that you can use as a tactic to figure out whether your objectives are helping with your business goals. UTM codes, if you don't know what they are, it's basically creating a unique URL for each different campaign that you're doing, right? So for instance, if you want to understand, oh, like this person came from this piece of this story that I put on Instagram, you could create a special link, what we call UTM codes, and create a special URL where you put into the Instagram story. So when people actually click on it, it shows up in your Google Analytics as that link. And like, oh, this person actually came in from that specific story in Instagram. And because of that, they were pushed to my website and they were encouraged to come to my website. So this actually tells you like, oh, this story actually resonated with, some of the people in my audience, right? So UTM codes are great. Also, again, low hanging fruit for you to use to figure out whether your objectives are helping with your business goals. In digital marketing, not sure if you know, but there's a word that we use for that. It's called attribution. So we're attributing the effectiveness of every single tactic under objectives using specific techniques such as promo codes, UTM codes, and so on. I left 2 links here that you could use to build your UTM URLs, and those are links that I use as well. But they're helpful because when I open Google Analytics and I look at the way traffic is being directed or the way sales are converted, I can tell, oh yeah, it happened because of this. I could attribute it to this social post, or I could attribute it to like a blog post, or I could attribute it to like a digital marketing ad banner that we put out, right? So I highly encourage you to try doing it so that you can get a better understanding of where your traffic is coming from, where your conversions are happening, so that from a content marketing perspective, it's worth my time to put more effort into this because it's working for me and helping me achieve my business goals.